It started on a cold October night. I was sitting in my room, the chill of autumn seeping through the cracks of my old house. The homework on my desk seemed endless, but my attention was drawn to the window. The wind howled, rattling the glass, and an eerie silence filled the air between the gusts. As I glanced outside, something caught my eye. At the end of our driveway, just beyond the reach of the streetlight, stood a figure. It was barely visible in the darkness, but it was there, motionless, staring up at my window. My heart skipped a beat. I blinked, hoping my eyes were playing tricks on me, but the figure remained. I tried to convince myself it was just a shadow, perhaps cast by a tree or some other mundane object. But every night, at exactly 11:15 p.m., the figure appeared. Always in the same spot, always looking up at me. It didn't move, didn't make a sound. Just stared. After a week of sleepless nights, I finally mentioned it to my parents. They laughed it off, suggesting it was my overactive imagination. But I knew what I saw. Determined to get proof, I set up my phone to record the driveway from my window. That night, as the clock struck 11:15, I watched the screen with bated breath. There it was, the figure, as still as ever. The next morning, I reviewed the footage. The figure was there, but the quality was too poor to make out any details. Frustrated, I decided to stay up the next night and watch it live. When the time came, I crept to the window, phone in hand, recording. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number: "Stop watching." My blood ran cold. I looked up from my phone and back out the window. The figure was gone. I searched the driveway frantically, my heart pounding in my chest. Then, I saw it, right in front of my window, written in what looked like blood: "I warned you." Terror gripped me as I stumbled back, dropping my phone. My parents rushed in, alarmed by my scream. I pointed to the window, but when they looked, the message had vanished. They saw nothing but the empty driveway. Desperation and fear gnawed at me. I needed help, so I called the police. They arrived quickly, but by then, the figure had disappeared completely. The officers found nothing unusual and left, telling me to call if anything happened again. As they drove away, I noticed something on the ground where the figure had stood, a small, old-fashioned pocket watch. I picked it up, my fingers trembling. The watch was cold and heavy, the time frozen at 11:15. That night, I could barely sleep, clutching the watch in my hand. As the hours ticked by, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. And then, at 11:15 p.m., my phone buzzed again. "See you soon." I looked out the window, and there it was, the figure, closer this time, standing at the edge of our front yard, its gaze fixed on me. I knew this was only the beginning. Sleep was a distant memory. Every night, the figure returned, each time inching closer to the house. It stood silent, its presence growing more menacing with every passing night. The pocket watch, its hands forever frozen at 11:15, never left my side. I was convinced it held some clue to the nightmare unfolding around me. The following evening, I decided to investigate further. My parents were out for the night, attending a dinner party, so I was alone. Armed with a flashlight and the pocket watch, I ventured outside, determined to confront the figure. The air was thick with tension as I stepped onto the driveway. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying an almost human-like murmur. My breath came in short gasps, the flashlight beam trembling in my hand. I approached the spot where the figure always stood, the anticipation clawing at my nerves. Nothing. The driveway was empty, the silence oppressive. I felt a strange mix of relief and disappointment, but as I turned to head back inside, my flashlight flickered, and a cold shiver ran down my spine. There it was, standing just a few feet away. I froze, the flashlight beam catching only the outline of its form. It was tall, its features obscured by shadows. The figure didn't move, but its presence was overwhelming, suffocating. I wanted to scream, to run, but I was rooted to the spot. Summoning every ounce of courage, I took a step forward. "Who are you?" My voice was barely a whisper, swallowed by the night. The figure remained silent, its gaze burning into me. I took another step, my hand trembling as I raised the pocket watch. "What do you want from me?" The figure tilted its head slightly, as if considering my question. Then, in a voice that seemed to echo from the depths of a grave, it spoke. "Time is running out." Before I could react, the figure vanished, dissolving into the darkness. I stood there, heart pounding, my mind reeling from the encounter. What did it mean? Why was it haunting me? The questions swirled in my head, unanswered. Back in my room, I examined the pocket watch again. There had to be something I was missing. I pried open the back, revealing intricate gears and mechanisms. Tucked inside was a tiny piece of parchment, yellowed with age. My hand shook as I unfolded it, revealing a single line of text: "Find the truth before it finds you." The words sent a chill down my spine. Determined to uncover the mystery, I began researching the watch. Late into the night, I scoured the internet for any information. The style and design suggested it was from the late 19th century, but there were no distinguishing marks or engravings. Then, I stumbled upon a local legend. In the late 1800s, a man named William Hawthorne had disappeared under mysterious circumstances. He was known to carry a pocket watch identical to the one I now held. According to the legend, Hawthorne was obsessed with time, convinced he could manipulate it. His obsession drove him to madness, and one night, he vanished, leaving behind a trail of blood and a chilling message: "Time is my master." As I read those words, my phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number: "The past is never dead. It's not even past." My heart raced as I glanced at the clock. 11:15 p.m. I looked out the window, expecting to see the figure. But this time, it was different. The figure was inside the house, standing at the bottom of the stairs, its eyes locked onto mine. I couldn't breathe. The figure was inside my house, standing motionless at the bottom of the stairs, its gaze piercing through the darkness. My mind raced, the terror clawing at my sanity. I had to do something, anything, to stop this nightmare. With trembling hands, I grabbed my baseball bat from the closet. Slowly, I crept down the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest like a war drum. The figure remained still, its eyes following my every move. I wanted to call out, to scream for help, but the words caught in my throat. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, I raised the bat, ready to strike. But before I could swing, the figure spoke again in that same eerie, hollow voice. "You can't change the past." Suddenly, it vanished, leaving behind an icy chill that seeped into my bones. I stood there, bat in hand, trying to process what had just happened. The house was silent, too silent. I turned on every light in the house, desperate to dispel the darkness and the fear that came with it. Exhausted and on the verge of tears, I collapsed onto the couch, clutching the pocket watch. My thoughts were a chaotic mess of confusion and dread. I needed answers, and I needed them now. Determined to uncover the truth, I revisited the local legend of William Hawthorne. His obsession with time, his sudden disappearance, the eerie parallels to my own situation, they couldn't be mere coincidences. I dug deeper, finding old newspaper articles and records that painted a grim picture of Hawthorne's descent into madness. Hawthorne had been a respected clockmaker, renowned for his intricate designs and unmatched craftsmanship. But his obsession with mastering time led him to experiment with forbidden rituals and ancient texts. According to the legend, he believed he could bend time to his will, to change events and alter reality. His experiments culminated in a final ritual, performed on the night he disappeared. The more I read, the more I felt a connection to Hawthorne's story. It was as if his fate was somehow entwined with mine, as if I was being drawn into the same dark obsession. But why? And what did the figure want from me? I decided to visit the local library, hoping to find more clues. There, I discovered a journal, supposedly written by Hawthorne himself. The pages were filled with his frantic scribblings, detailing his experiments and his growing paranoia. One entry stood out. "Time is a relentless master. It gives and takes, but never yields. The watcher is its harbinger, a guardian of the boundaries we are not meant to cross. Beware the watcher, for it sees all, knows all." My blood ran cold. The watcher, the figure that haunted my nights, was somehow connected to Hawthorne's experiments. But what did it want from me? Question mark. Why was I being targeted? As I left the library, my phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number: "You are closer than you think." I rushed home, my mind racing with possibilities. As I approached my house, I noticed something strange. The front door was ajar, and an eerie glow emanated from inside. I stepped in cautiously, my senses on high alert. The glow was coming from the living room. On the coffee table, where I had left the pocket watch, was a book, Hawthorne's journal. The watch was now open, its hands spinning wildly. The air crackled with an unnatural energy, and I felt a strange compulsion to pick up the journal. As I did, the room seemed to warp around me, the walls closing in, the air thick with a palpable sense of dread. The journal fell open to a page I hadn't seen before, the ink seemingly fresh, as if it had just been written. The past is never dead. It's not even past. You must confront the watcher and uncover the truth, or be consumed by it. Just then, a low, guttural whisper filled the room, sending shivers down my spine. I turned, and there it was, the watcher, standing inches away, its eyes burning with an unholy light. This time, there was no escape. I had to face the terror head-on and uncover the truth, before it was too late. The watcher's eyes glowed with an eerie, otherworldly light, locking me in place with their malevolent stare. I could feel its presence pulling at the very fabric of my sanity, urging me to give in to the fear. But I knew that if I did, I might never escape. The journal in my hand seemed to pulse with a life of its own, as if urging me to continue reading. My fingers trembled as I turned the page, revealing more of Hawthorne's desperate notes and fragmented thoughts. One entry caught my eye, written in a hurried, frantic script. The ritual must be completed to sever the bond. The watcher is bound by time, and only through the ritual can it be confronted. Beware the tolling of the clock, for it marks the hour of reckoning. My mind raced. A ritual. Something Hawthorne had discovered, something that could possibly end this nightmare. But what was it? And how could I perform it? The watcher remained still, its eyes never leaving me. I took a deep breath and gathered my courage. What do you want from me? I demanded, my voice shaking but determined. In response, the watcher extended a bony hand, pointing to the pocket watch. The message was clear. The answer lay within the watch itself. I flipped the watch over and examined it closely. There, etched into the back cover, was a series of symbols and a small, almost imperceptible indentation. I pressed on the indentation, and with a soft click, a hidden compartment popped open, revealing a folded piece of paper. With trembling hands, I unfolded the paper. It contained detailed instructions for the ritual, along with a list of items required: a candle, a mirror, a piece of chalk, and a lock of hair. My heart sank. These items seemed random, but I knew there was a deeper significance. I had to find them and complete the ritual. Gathering the necessary items was a nerve-wracking task. The fear of encountering the watcher at every turn weighed heavily on me. But finally, I had everything I needed. I returned to my room and cleared a space on the floor, drawing the symbols from the paper in a circle with the chalk. I placed the mirror at the center of the circle and lit the candle, the flickering flame casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. My heart pounded as I placed the lock of hair next to the mirror, the final piece of the puzzle. The instructions were clear. I had to recite an incantation while looking into the mirror, focusing on the image of the watcher. My hands shook as I held the paper, my voice barely a whisper as I began to chant the words. The air around me grew colder, the shadows darker, and the room seemed to close in on itself. As I finished the incantation, the mirror's surface began to ripple like water. I saw my reflection twist and distort, replaced by the watcher's image. Its eyes burned with an intensity that made my skin crawl. The watcher raised a hand, and a deafening tolling sound filled the room, as if a giant clock were marking the hour. The pocket watch in my hand grew hot, almost burning my skin. I fought the urge to drop it, knowing it was the key to completing the ritual. The watcher stepped closer in the mirror, its hand reaching out toward me. In a final, desperate act, I held the pocket watch up to the mirror and spoke the last line of the incantation. The watcher's hand touched the glass, and a blinding light erupted from the mirror, engulfing the room. When the light faded, the watcher was gone. The mirror was shattered, pieces of glass scattered across the floor. The pocket watch lay cold and lifeless in my hand, its hand still frozen at 11:15. I sank to the floor, exhaustion and relief washing over me. It was over. The watcher was gone, and I was free. But as I looked around the room, my heart sank. On the wall, written in the same blood-red script as before, was a new message: the past can never be erased. The watcher may have been banished, but its presence still lingered, a chilling reminder that the past is never truly gone. Despite the lingering sense of dread, I tried to return to a semblance of normalcy. Days turned into weeks, and though the watcher no longer appeared at 11:15, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still terribly wrong. The messages haunted my dreams. Every night, I found myself back at that moment, staring into the burning eyes of the watcher. Each time, the words "the past can never be erased" echoed in my mind, louder and more insistent. I needed to understand what it meant, but the answers seemed to elude me. One rainy afternoon, I decided to visit the local historical society, hoping to find more information about William Hawthorne and his experiments. The building was old, filled with dusty shelves and the scent of aged paper. I explained my situation to the curator, a kindly old man named Mr. Thornton, who seemed intrigued by my story. "Ah, William Hawthorne," Mr. Thornton mused, his eyes glinting with curiosity. "A tragic figure, to be sure. Many believe his experiments drove him mad, but there's always been something more to his story, something the records don't fully capture." He led me to a small, dimly lit room filled with old documents and artifacts. Among them was a leather-bound book, its cover worn and faded. "This," Mr. Thornton said, "is Hawthorne's personal diary, recovered from his home after his disappearance. Perhaps it holds the answers you're seeking." I spent hours poring over the diary, each entry revealing more about Hawthorne's obsession with time. He wrote of his experiments, his growing paranoia, and his belief that time was not a linear path but a tangled web, with past, present, and future intertwined. One entry stood out, dated just a few days before his disappearance. "I have seen the Watcher. It is the harbinger, the guardian of the temporal boundaries I sought to breach. I believed I could master time, but I was wrong. The Watcher has shown me the truth. The past can never be erased, only confronted. There is a price for my transgressions, and I fear it is too late to escape it." My heart raced as I read those words. Hawthorne's fate seemed eerily similar to my own. But what did he mean by confronting the past? Was there something I had missed, some hidden aspect of the ritual? I thanked Mr. Thornton and hurried home, my mind ablaze with possibilities. As I entered my room, the sense of unease returned. The shattered mirror, the cold pocket watch, the blood-red message, they all pointed to something I hadn't fully grasped. I retrieved the pocket watch, examining it once more. The symbols etched into its surface, the hidden compartment, it all seemed too deliberate, too purposeful. I reopened the compartment, my fingers tracing the tiny symbols inside. Suddenly, one of them shifted, revealing a hidden mechanism. With a soft click, the watch sprang open further, revealing another folded piece of parchment. My hands trembled as I unfolded it, revealing a map and a set of instructions for a second ritual. This one was different, more complex. It spoke of a place, an abandoned church on the outskirts of town, where the boundary between past and present was thinnest. That night, armed with the new instructions, I made my way to the old church. The building was a decaying ruin, its once grand facade now crumbling and overgrown with ivy. I stepped inside, the air thick with dust and the scent of mold. The sense of foreboding was palpable, but I knew I had to continue. Following the map, I found the designated spot, a small, circular area in the center of the nave. I drew the symbols on the ground, placed the items as instructed, and lit the candles. The air grew colder, the shadows deeper, as I began the incantation. As I spoke the final words, the room seemed to warp around me. The past and present collided, the air crackling with energy. The Watcher appeared, its form more defined, more human, yet still otherworldly. Its eyes burned with a mixture of anger and sorrow. "You seek the truth," it said, its voice echoing through the empty church. "But are you prepared to face it?" Before I could respond, the Watcher raised its hand, and the world around me dissolved into darkness. I felt a sudden rush of vertigo, as if being pulled through time itself. When the darkness lifted, I found myself standing in a familiar place, my own home, but different, older. The house was filled with the sounds of laughter and conversation. I walked through the halls, my heart pounding as I recognized the faces of my family, but something was wrong. These were not just memories, it was as if I was truly there, in the past. The Watcher's voice echoed in my mind. "To confront the past, you must understand it. Only then can you hope to break free." As I moved through the house, I began to piece together the forgotten truth, secrets long buried, mistakes left unresolved. And with each revelation, the weight of the past grew heavier, the sense of dread more profound. I knew then that the Watcher was not just a guardian, but a reflection of the darkness within us all. To confront it, I had to face the truth about my own past, no matter how painful or terrifying. Only then could I hope to find peace and escape the Watcher's relentless gaze. The sounds of laughter and conversation felt like a cruel mockery as I moved through the house. The faces of my family, vibrant and full of life, contrasted sharply with the dark secret I felt lurking just beneath the surface. The Watcher's voice echoed in my mind, urging me to uncover the truth. But where to begin? I found myself in the living room, watching a scene unfold that seemed achingly familiar. My younger self, no more than 10 years old, was playing with my little sister, Emily. My parents sat on the couch, their smiles masking a deep tension. I watched as my father took a deep breath and began to speak, his voice shaky. "We need to talk about what happened," he said, his eyes darting nervously. We can't keep ignoring it. My mother nodded, her expression somber. I know, but how do we even begin? It's been years, and it still haunts us. The scene dissolved into darkness, replaced by another memory. This time, I was in the attic, rummaging through old boxes. My hands shook as I pulled out a dusty old journal, its pages yellowed with age. I opened it, recognizing my mother's handwriting. The entries were filled with sorrow and regret, detailing an incident I had never known about, a car accident that had taken the life of my older brother, a brother I had no memory of. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. The accident had been a turning point, a catalyst for the darkness that now plagued our family. My parents had buried their grief, their guilt, and in doing so, had unknowingly passed that burden on to me. The Watcher was not just an external force, it was a manifestation of our unresolved pain and sorrow. I turned to leave the attic, but the Watcher appeared before me, its eyes filled with a mixture of pity and resolve. You understand now, it said, its voice softer, almost compassionate. The past cannot be erased, but it can be confronted. You must help your family find peace. Before I could respond, the world around me shifted again. I was back in the present, standing in the dimly lit church. The ritual had brought me full circle, showing me the truth I needed to see. But what now? How could I help my family confront a past they had spent so long trying to forget? I gathered my courage and returned home, the weight of my discovery pressing down on me. My parents were in the living room, their faces etched with worry. They looked up as I entered, their concern deepening at the sight of my pale, haunted expression. We need to talk, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. About the accident. About everything. My mother gasped, her eyes filling with tears. My father looked away, his jaw clenched tightly. But I pressed on, sharing what I had learned from the journal, from the Watcher. The words came slowly at first, but soon, the floodgates opened, and years of buried pain and guilt poured out. My parents listened, their faces a mix of shock and relief. As I finished, silence settled over us, heavy but not oppressive. It was a silence filled with understanding, with the first tentative steps toward healing. We should have told you, my mother said, her voice trembling. We thought we were protecting you, but we were only making it worse. My father nodded, tears streaming down his face. We were afraid, and we let that fear control us. I'm so sorry. We embraced, the three of us holding onto each other as if afraid to let go. The Watcher's presence seemed to fade, its purpose fulfilled. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace, of hope. That night, I slept deeply, free from the nightmares that had plagued me for so long. When I awoke, the pocket watch lay on my bedside table, its hands finally moving, ticking softly in the morning light. The message was clear, time was no longer my enemy. As I moved through the house, I noticed subtle changes. The atmosphere was lighter, the shadows less oppressive. My parents were talking, really talking, for the first time in years. Emily, though too young to fully understand, seemed happier, her laughter no longer tinged with a sadness she couldn't name. But as I walked past the window, a chill ran down my spine. There, at the end of the driveway, stood the Watcher, its gaze fixed on me. It was a reminder that while the past had been confronted, it was not completely vanquished. The Watcher was a part of me, a guardian of the lessons learned and the pain endured. I knew the journey was far from over. The past had its claws deep in our family, and the road to healing would be long and difficult. But with the Watcher as my guide, I felt ready to face whatever came next. And as I stared back at the figure, I saw something new in its eyes, not just the reflection of my fears, but the glimmer of hope, of a future no longer bound by the chains of the past. The days turned into weeks, and the constant presence of the Watcher became a part of my nightly routine. Its silent vigil at the end of the driveway was both a comfort and a reminder that my journey was not yet complete. The Watcher had guided me through the shadows of my family's past, but the final truth it spoke of still eluded me. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the familiar chill of night set in, I found myself drawn to the attic once more. There, among the forgotten relics of our family history, I felt the weight of generations pressing down on me. The pocket watch in my hand seemed to pulse with a life of its own, guiding me to a small, locked chest I had overlooked before. With trembling hands, I forced the lock open, revealing an assortment of old photographs and letters. Among them was a faded portrait of a young boy, my older brother. The sight of his face, so full of life and promise, brought a lump to my throat. As I sifted through the letters, one in particular caught my eye. It was addressed to me, in my mother's handwriting. My dearest child. If you are reading this, it means you have discovered the truth about our family. There are things we never told you, secrets buried deep within our hearts. Your brother's death was not merely an accident. It was the result of a ritual gone wrong, a desperate attempt to change the past and save him. We failed, and in doing so, we cursed ourselves with the weight of that failure. The Watcher you see is a manifestation of that curse, a guardian of the temporal boundaries we sought to breach. It has watched over us, a constant reminder of our transgressions. But it is also a guide, a protector, ensuring that we learn from our mistakes. You have been chosen to break this cycle, to confront the darkness that haunts our family. To do so, you must complete the ritual that we began, but with one crucial difference: you must accept the past and its consequences, rather than seek to change it. With all my love. Mother. Tears blurred my vision as I read the letter. The truth was both devastating and liberating. My family had been caught in a web of their own making, and the Watcher was the key to breaking free. I knew what I had to do. That night, I prepared for the final ritual. The instructions from my mother's letter were clear. I needed to perform the ritual at the exact spot where my brother had died. It was a place I had avoided for years, a place filled with painful memories. But now, it was the only path to redemption. Under the cover of darkness, I made my way to the secluded stretch of road where the accident had occurred. The night was eerily silent, the air thick with anticipation. I drew the symbols on the ground, placed the candles around the circle, and held the pocket watch tightly in my hand. As I began the incantation, the air grew colder, the shadows lengthening around me. The Watcher appeared, its eyes glowing with an intensity I had never seen before. This time, it spoke not with words, but with a presence, a deep understanding that resonated within my soul. The final words of the incantation echoed through the night, and a brilliant light engulfed the area. The past, present, and future seemed to converge in that moment, the boundaries of time dissolving. I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me, as if the weight of generations had been lifted. When the light faded, the Watcher was gone. The pocket watch in my hand ticked steadily, its hands moving once more. I knew that the cycle had been broken, the curse lifted. My family was free. As I walked home, the first rays of dawn breaking through the darkness, I felt a sense of closure. The Watcher's vigil was over, but its lessons remained. The past could not be changed, but it could be understood, accepted, and learned from. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in our home lightened. My parents and I talked openly about our memories, our regrets, and our hopes for the future. Emily, though still young, sensed the change and flourished in the newfound harmony. The pocket watch now sat on my desk, a reminder of the journey we had taken. Its steady ticking was a comforting presence, a symbol of the time we had reclaimed. The shadows of the past no longer held power over us, they had been confronted and laid to rest. And as I looked out the window, I saw a world filled with possibilities, no longer bound by the chains of history. The Watcher's lesson was clear: the past is a part of us, but it does not define us. It is through understanding and acceptance that we find the strength to move forward, unburdened by the ghosts of yesterday.